Many thanks for staying here on Joy News Desk. Now, Minister Designate for Local Government and Rural Development, Hajia Alima says government will seek a constitutional amendment to get Metropolitan Municipal District Chief Executives, MMDCEs, elected into office. Answering questions at the Appointment Committee on Monday, she explained this is necessary as the constitutional provision on the subject is a non-entrenched clause. Hajia Alima also insisted she did not err in sacking MMDCEs.
Mr. Chairman, I'm glad he ended up by saying that it ought to have been signed by the president. In other words, his problem is not with the action. The action he's saying was not illegal. It could have been done. His issue is just my signing the document. And again, the Constitution 58, if you look at Article 58(1) and 58(2), no, I'm coming. I'm looking for 58. If you look at 58(1), it says the executive authority, with your permission, please, the executive authority of Ghana shall vest in the president and shall be exercised in accordance with the provision of this constitution. Then it goes to 58(3), and it says, subject to the provisions of this constitution, the functions conferred on the president by clause 1 of this article may be exercised by him either directly or through officers subordinate to him. This is what the Constitution says. And the president, and again, as again you have alluded, the transitional provisions, you've referred to the Presidential Transition Act, the various provisions. It again refers, the first one that you read, 14(1), on the assumption of office, those persons specified in the schedule will cease to hold office. And it goes further to say that the functions, 14(2), the functions of office of a person who ceases to hold office under subsection 1 shall be performed by a person so appointed by the president for the period specified in writing by the president. In a letter dated 9th January, the president wrote to me, Alima Mahama, directing that I be his representative to take charge of affairs of the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development.
Order.
And following on that, he directed that by virtue of the powers invested in him in Article 2433, he was revoking appointment of DCEs, and therefore I should go ahead and send out that letter, which I did.
Well, I'm not going straight to Elton.
Signed it.
I remember you giving us enough information. I think it's okay.
No, I want to say how the letter was signed.
Well, there were exchanges at the veteran of Minister Designate for Energy Bachi Ejako last night as MPs scrutinized the nominee's ability to deliver efficient power supply to Ghanaians. Now, the controversy started from a question posed by MP for Tamale North, Al-Hassan Suhini, on a scandal at the Bank of New York.
Justice Department in New York filed civil suits against the bank alleging a decade-old foreign currency fraud. Now the question is, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, I have tried earlier, but you go out on social media assaulting that. I'm trying to prevent you from asking questions. That's why I'm indulging you. But this is clearly breaching our Rules Order 67. Can you please go on to your question? What has the bank's prosecution of others, not the candidate, not the nominee here, got to do with us?
Thank you. I'll ask the question now. Thank you. I'll ask the question now. Now, can you, based on this record of the bank that you worked with at the time that you worked, can you kindly?
I guess I may also need to.
Well, so let's go now live to Parliament, where my colleague Elton Brobe is having a conversation with the chairman of the Vetting Appointments Committee, I beg your pardon, Joe Osei Wusu, on matters arising so far.
Such criticism is not well placed because people are not informed about it.
Right, but beyond who to call and to ask which question, the issue here is that you also control how the question is being asked or how the question is asked, to the extent that sometimes you overrule some of these questions, which according to the questionnaires may be very important. How do you respond to this issue as well?
Well, how important or otherwise, it's only in the head of the person intending to ask the question. But Parliament is regulated by our rules, our standing orders. If you ask questions that are not admissible in view of our standing orders, I will not admit them.
What constitutes admissibility of a question?
Order 67 of the standing orders controls questions and how they should be asked. And if you like, I'll quote some of them for you. Order 67 1A. A question shall not include the names of persons or statements of fact unless they are necessary to make the question intelligible, and in case of statements of fact can be authenticated by the member concerned or contain charges which the member asking the question is not prepared to substantiate. B, the question shall not contain any arguments, expression of opinion, inferences, imputations, epithets, or controversial, ironical, or offensive expression of hypothetical cases. And the next relevant one is F. A question shall not be asked which makes or implies a charge of a personal character or which reflects upon character or conduct, except of persons in their official or public capacity. Now, these are the basis upon which I decide which questions will be admitted or not. But in all fairness, I think there are only about two or three instances where I have overruled. And even that, I allow the persons to go through until I determine that the facts that are being put out are not necessary in determining whether or not a candidate is fit for purpose.
All right.
You know, so I think the charge is really, really unfair. And I can assure you, let me be specific.
Yeah, I wanted us to get into the specifics, especially and to come up with names. Yesterday, for example, the Member of Parliament for Tamale North, Al-Hassan Suhini, expressed his displeasure at the way he's been treated on the committee. Now, he laid a foundation before coming to ask a question about some, money laundering allegations against the New York Bank, which the energy minister designate used to be the vice president of that committee. Now, you overruled that question. According to him, the question would have afforded Ghanaians the opportunity for the minister designate to explain if he played any role or not, but that issue did not come out at all, as far as your discretion was concerned.
Wait, if you listened, I permitted him to go all the way to the end. And when he asked the question, it showed clearly that he was not alleging that the minister has been named in any misconduct. The minister designate had been named in any misconduct or in any way related to the issues that have worked in the bank, had happened in the bank. I mean, why should, just because he worked in an organization which something happened, and he personally was not involved in it in any way, people who were involved had actually been named and prosecuted. Why should that be a basis for asking him a question, not about the bank's conduct, but about his prospective work? I don't see where it relates at all. People may conceive things in their mind, but they must make them relevant. Just because I've worked in Parliament, or let's say, for example, I was a judge. That's an example that comes to me. And then some of my colleagues are being accused and proven to have misconducted themselves and been disciplined. Does that make me culpable? How should that reflect on me? When I was there, if I was culpable, I would also have been indicted. So I don't get the sense in which he's trying to rope in. And really, for our purposes, one. The other thing is that it is unacceptable in parliamentary practice for you to name and make allegations about persons who are not available to answer. The allegations he was making about Bank of England. Bank of England technically is a person. Bank of New York. They were not there. They were not in the box. They could not respond whether what you're saying is in fact true or not. So you should not bring that onto the floor of Parliament. That's why, first, you recall that the day before, I mentioned that Order 67 is what regulates our work there, and I commend that to him. I understand that when you start afresh, sometimes you can be confused as to what is admissible or not. And so the second occasion that I advised him to move on and ask another question, I drew his attention to Order 67. And his leaders sitting right with me understood the argument, and I know that they actually took the orders to him to read because they think that he was breaching the rules, and they did not disagree with the rulings I made.
Do you think that some of these new MPs are not abreast with the standing orders relating to the work of the appointment committee? That's how sometimes they are overzealous in asking questions that may not be admissible.
I think so. And that's why I was flexible in the beginning. I mean, it is not unusual at all. They have had the standing orders for less than 2 weeks, and unless there are specific inferences, you may not be able to read and imbibe all of them. So I specifically drew his attention to the 67 and asked him that I'm commending that to him. We should be guided by how work in that respect is done, how our procedure in Parliament, what is admissible and what is not admissible. So the charge that I'm being autocratic is so inappropriate. Inappropriate in the sense that I'm actually using the rules. And indeed, I know the leaders I'm working with, the minority leader and the chief whip. If I were wrong, they would not have kept quiet. They knew I was right, and indeed, I saw the minority leader asked the chief whip to send the rules to him if he didn't have a copy, so he could be guided by it.
But Mr. Suhuyini again personalized the issue and says that, to quote him directly, I'm not happy with the way I'm being treated on this committee. Now, there's a general feeling out there that perhaps your role as chairman of the committee is sometimes seen as being overprotective of the nominees. Is there any agenda to stifle those on the minority side from asking questions they deem important to some of these nominees?
I think that some of these charges, I'll better leave it to those of you watching the proceedings. Who have I stopped from asking questions? And which of those nominees is not well placed to answer any of these questions? Except that I should not allow you to breach our rules. Parliament is governed by rules. And for me, if he doesn't, probably there's a baptism of fire. It will help him to learn the rules. It will enable him work better. I overruled the ranking member. He didn't argue because he knows that I'm going by the rules. You know, sometimes people even think that I'm being weak because I allow them to ask as many questions as they want. That is what is a practice here. When you're a leader, we don't restrain you. The other members, we regulate how many questions you can ask. Even that, people think that it is too much. You spend 3-4 hours on one candidate.
That's sometimes on just the CV.
Yes, you know, but as much as possible, we want to afford the opportunity to the candidates to small clerical errors and things that will be in record. We should clean them up so that the record will look clean for them and for people. For posterity, for all of us, you know. So, as for agenda to stifle anybody, look, we are how many on the committee? 26, including myself. There's 16, 10. Yet, if I afford 5 opportunities here to the 16 of us, I afford 5 opportunities to the 10. If I afford 3 to the 16, 3, that is disproportionate, isn't it? Right. I'm surprised that they are not saying that. Because the principle which we apply here is that when it comes to voting, the majority will have its way. But when it comes to expressing themselves, the minority should be allowed to have its way. That was the ruling Honorable Pijajete introduced the House, and it has stuck because that is fair. So if anybody should be complaining, it should be the majority, that we are in the majority, but you give us equal. Otherwise, in my proper view, when unequals are treated equally, there's injustice. But in this case, the majority is not complaining. So I think that the charge is so unfair. But hey, this is Parliament. It is also a place of politics, so you can understand.
So as far as you are concerned, you are doing what is expected of you in consonance with the standing orders and the Constitution of the Republic.
Let anybody point out to me that in overruling this question, I breached any rule, or that they were not. I've read the rules out. If any of them is not properly placed within the rules.
Away from that, today Parliament is sitting, and you are also scheduled to vet the other set of nominees. How are you combining the chamber and then the committee vetting?
Well, I'm just trying to reach the ranking member, and then we agree. I'm proposing that we go and start in the chamber and reschedule our meeting time, appointments committee meeting from 10 to 12. So we will start with the speaker, and then we seek leave to go and continue with the appointments committee work.
And my final question will be, I know that the president named several people beyond the ones you are vetting right now. Is there a plan in motion? Because we know that today is going to be the end for the first batch. How are you going into the next stage?
The program we have agreed is the report on the first batch may be ready by the close of day today. So we submit, we lay the report tomorrow and probably debate it the day after. And then we'll continue with the rest from Friday. That's how we envisage it. But even that, we will break after Friday and may resume the first week of February, because the Parliament, the entire Parliament is going on a training program, all of us. Yeah. The third batch has not even reached us. In fact, the communication did not reach Parliament before we rose, so most probably that will be announced today, and then it will be referred to the committee. The second batch has been referred to our committee, but the third batch has not reached the committee.
So you expect approval or otherwise of your committee's report by this week, as far as the first batch is concerned?
Most likely, yes. We hope that by close of day Thursday, we may have, if we're able to go with our plan, tomorrow we'll lay the report, and then most likely we'll debate the report on Thursday and approve them.
Thank you very much, Honorable Right Honorable Joseph Osei, who is the first Deputy Speaker of Parliament. He also chairs the Appointments Committee of Parliament, and we've been speaking to him about concerns about his conduct as far as chairing the committee is concerned. Now, what we've been told is that later this afternoon, after midday, they will sit again to vet the remaining three, and then the expectation is that they will lay their report this week, move it, and expect the House to debate and come to a conclusion as to their reaction to their recommendations before the House will take another break and then come back later to see to the other nominees, by the President. So back to you, studio. My name is Elton Brobe from the Office of the First Deputy Speaker of Parliament.
Thank you, Elton. And here in the studio, my name is Bernice Abubedu. You're watching Joy News Desk, and Elton, as Elton mentioned, 3 ministers designate will appear before Parliament's Appointments Committee today.